alumni, family, visiting friends, but last but not least, to the 1973 graduating class, the Golden Eagles, I say, may peace be unto you. You know, when it was announced that I was going to be the speaker, Bernard George, who started with us in '69, he graduated in '75 from Newbern. They don't say Newbern, they say Newbern, North Carolina. He said, why you? He said, at times you've been down on North Carolina Central, true that. He said, you really haven't participated. This is only my second homecoming in 50 years. But I said, why not but me? See, in the Bible, there's a story of the prodigal son. And he went away for a long time. He messed up the family fortune. I didn't have one to mess up, but I've been away. And when he wanted to come back home, there was one brother that wasn't happy, always is. But the father said, my son has been lost, but now he's found. So all I want to say is this. If y'all going to slay the fatted calf, let me know, because it don't look like I've been missing too many meals. I always dreamed about being the graduation speaker at North Carolina Central. But I feel that I wasn't prominent enough. I'm not congressman or senator. I'm just a black man trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. Then there are those who say, Maurice, you too radical. They say, Maurice, you too controversial. Maurice, you too militant. But I make no apologies to anybody to fight for the liberation of my people. I went back and I read about the life of Dr. Shepard. And you know, one thing stood out. They said that the stores were so fearful of us causing problems downtown that they were sending goods up to Dr. Shepard's office for him to sell. Do you realize in 1910, when Dr. Shepard founded this esteemed institution, it was 100 years after the birth of Nat Turner. Now we all know about Nat. They allowed Nat to be educated. They allowed Nat to read the Bible. And see, the Bible can be used as a tool of oppression, or it can be used as a tool of liberation. And Nat started a rebellion, killed a lot of people. And they caught Nat, and they tried him, and 62 co-conspirators, and they hung him. But they also cut their heads off, and they put them on spikes, and they lined the road in Virginia that is called the Blackhead Dead Post Highway, because they wanted to intimidate our people, not to get educated, not to stand up and fight. And it worked. So when I think about Dr. Shepard, he wasn't a poor man. He was one of the founding fathers of North Carolina Mutual. That would have been easy to be with Farrakhan called the buffer class. See, the buffer class has been a class of people that's been put in front between the masses and the oppressor. You remember Fiddler and Roots? His job was to keep the slaves under control. You remember he bragged about he had a wooden floor? Because generally the buffer class lives better than the masses. You appreciate what I'm saying? Okay? But to have a vision to start an institution, but I do believe that Dr. Shepard said, how can I teach a liberation theology without offending Raleigh, without offending my white benefactors? And it's a fine line because they were still afraid of a black man being educated and a black woman. My journey to North Carolina Central. I was like a lot of young boys. I was interested in two things. I was interested in playing sports and being around the company of some pretty young ladies. And they sure have, and will have a pretty lot of young ladies here. So it's easy to come here and not do your schoolwork. And I wasn't doing mine. I had a high math aptitude. My SAT scores were like 300-point different on the math versus the verbal. So I scored high aptitude tests. But I was here having a good time, Kappa parties, Q's parties, Groove Fi Groove. And then I went home, I was on semester probation. And my mother was in the hospital. She was down in New York Hospital on 60th Street, Manhattan. And when I went, I took my 14-year-old sister and 9-year-old brother. And they wouldn't let my brother go upstairs because he was too young. And when we came downstairs, my mother was getting ready to go home. And she looked out the courtyard window. And she looked down and she waved. And my sister started crying. And my 9-year-old brother started crying. And I said, God, I don't have no time to be playing games. See, every man knows the day that he becomes a man. So you can be 80 years of age and never be a man, but a man knows the day that he becomes a man. That day I became a man. And I came back to North Carolina Central University and I did my schoolwork. I worked with Lindsay Merritt in the placement office. I used to go in the cafeteria with a shirt and tie. People would laugh at me. Who he think he is? Well, I think I'm gonna be somebody one day. I got full fellowships to go to graduate school. I scored the second highest test score ever at NCCU on the business aptitude test. But Lord have mercy, I was in turmoil. I couldn't figure out which one of these offers to take. And one day I was in the administration building, and a fair-skinned brother with curly hair. He said to me, what's the matter? And he took me in a room. He said, you know what the problem is? You want me to make up your mind for you, and I'm not going to do that. He said, I will discuss with you the criteria of by which you make a decision. That man's name was Dallas Simmons. If you don't know who Dallas Simmons is, look him up. He went on to be president of St. Paul's. He went on to be president of Virginia Union. Would I have gotten that type of attention at Duke? And I had a chance to transfer. Would I have gotten that type of personal attention at Bethune-Cookman? Some of my best friends went to Bethune. That's what you get out of North Carolina Central, Bernard, that I didn't appreciate the years later. But there was an incident in income tax class, Dr. Ball. Oh, we had a take-home test one day. And we had to be turned in at the start of class. And I wasn't sure if I had wrote my name on my paper. And I started back. And Dr. Ball said something, and everybody started laughing. And I turned to Dr. Ball and said, are you talking to me? Everybody started laughing. I said, let me tell you something. If you got something to say to me, you look me in my face and you tell me. Lord have mercy, I'm my mother's son. My mother's from a little town in Alabama called Atmore, Alabama. And you're not going to find it unless you're looking for it. The most famous person out of Atmore is Vandy Holyfield. Okay? Her father owned a farm. How he got the money to buy it, I don't know. He had a smokehouse. But they said one day, and to my white brothers and sisters, I'm talking about white, but it's a term, you gotta be honest. Okay? And one day, he said a white man came on the property and disrespected one of his daughters. So she said that night, they came back on horses, 4 of them. And they called my grandfather out on the porch. And my mother was 12 years of age. And she had a shotgun pointed out the window, along with her 14-year-old sister and my grandmother. And my grandfather's name was Butler Mosley, 5'7", Atmore, Alabama. And they said, did you beat this man? He said, yes, I did. Because that man came on my property and disrespected one of my daughters. And I'm not taking that from anybody. She said they left. They came back the next day and asked him would he be the sheriff on the colored part of the business. Right? So he said no. He said you gotta, look, my mother's quote, and I debated whether to use the word, but I'm gonna say it like this. Can I say it the way my mother said? My mother said the white man in Alabama always got them a nigger to do their dirty work. Okay? The other thing she said was, for my white brothers and sisters, listen, she said the difference between a white man in Alabama and New York, she said the one in New York will smile in your face and call you a nigger behind your back. The one in Alabama will call you a nigger to your face. Okay? So these are lessons. Remember that buffer class. Remember that. So I asked my mother a question. If that man had touched your father, what you would have did? My mother said, that man touched my father, I would have shot him. See, if I'm militant, where do you think I got it from? You know, a lot of times when I speak, I always have the early part laid out. But sometimes I don't have the end. But let me tell you my journey. When I came here, the first event I attended was Dick Gregory speaking in the student union. And I don't want to be obscene or vulgar, but I'm going to quote Dick Gregory. And Dick Gregory said, all of you are sexual perverts. Everybody started laughing. See, to me, Dick Gregory is kind of like David Chappelle. Kind of monotone in their delivery. But listen to David Chappelle. Both David's parents are college professors. So there's a lot of wisdom in what he's talking about. And he said because you put your mouth on a woman's breast. That's what he said, for those who were there. He said because if you go to Africa, certain parts, the only person that's allowed to put their mouth on a woman's breast is a baby. Then he also spoke about IQ. He said you can have 150 IQ here in Durham, but if I put you in the jungle, your IQ might be 20 or 30. It's a lesson. Anything that can be judged by moral or immoral, right or wrong, good or bad, beautiful or ugly, is subject to time, place, and situation, and also subject to those who are giving you the information to make you determine it. Then you take psychology 101, and they talk about the difference between learned behavior and innate behavior. That a baby is programmed with words like they put a white doll baby into a black child's hand and tell her it's beautiful. And we wonder why we spend $6 billion a year on getting our hair straightened and everything else. During our period, though, we did have a return to blackness thing, didn't we? With the afros and the dashikis and everything. But Lord in have mercy, they had me read in freshman English, John Locke's essay on government. John Locke said that man would start off being uncivilized, go back to move into civilization, and move back to being uncivilized. So in a non-civilized society, you have no buses, no traffic lights, and own land, boom, you put a stake in the ground, you say it's mine. In a civilized society, to own land, you got a piece of paper called a deed, and you own that land. And they're allowed to pass that deed down from generation to generation to generation. There's only one thing wrong. When they set up that deed system, we were still in slavery. So we didn't get our fair share, did we? And black blood has been shed from the Civil War to the Gulf War to protect the sanctity of those deeds, but yet we're denied those due free hours that our ancestors put their blood, sweat, and tears into this country. But let me say this, to challenge that system, that's a suicide mission. They will throw everything at you to stop you. And when I get down on my knees, which I do every day, and I pray to God said, but Maurice, didn't the North Carolina Central Law School started by Dr. Shepard, producer Willie Garrett? He said, didn't the North Carolina Central Law School producer Maynard Jackson? He said, be patient. It's not the leadership I'm worried about. I'm worried about the will of the people. Have they lost their will to fight? Look what we did in Alabama in 1956. Look what we did across this world. But too many of us have been compromised. We got Lincolns and Cadillacs, and we got houses with wood floors, and we've forgotten where we came from. I don't know how much time I have, because there's a lot that I want to say, but I want to respect the time frame. And maybe, you never know, I might get invited back and I may not. So I want to close by, sisters sister give me the seat. I told her to give me 5 minutes. So. I'm going to skip a lot of things, because I went through some trials and tribulations. But in 1985, I was on top of the world. I was a sales manager at Xerox. See, I wanted to tell you a story about when I bought the house for my mother. In June 1978, I made $13,000. That was a lot of money back in them days. My white manager, Pat Lynch, gave me major accounts in New York. So I was handling Columbia University, Hunter College, and I was able to take that type of money. When I got the house from my mother, my sister was going through chemo and radiation, 22 years of age. And the day I went to the closing, my mother was taking care of my sister. And my sister was in bed. And when I walked in the door, my mother was praying. And I walked over, and I put them keys in my mother's hands. And my mother broke down and cried. I tell young boys all the day, I made my dreams come true. I told my mother when I was 10 years of age, she didn't have to go clean anybody's houses anymore. And that's because of the education that I got at North Carolina Central University. Yeah, I could have been congressman, and I'll tell that story another time, because I was asked by Calvin Otis Butts, who became pastor of Abyssinia. But the pastor before Butts was Samuel DeWitt Proctor. Okay? Because Adam, as much as I love Adam, had left Abyssinia in an absolute mess. And you bring in an administrator. And Butts asked me a question that most of you will never be asked. He said, are you the king or the kingmaker? See, the reason Obama couldn't do anything for you because he had to bow to his kingmaker. It's 1,000 people here today if they let you speak at the National Democratic Convention. Soon Cookman student be a star, wouldn't they? But why him? And you have to be beholden to your kingmaker. But I'm gonna close now, even though I got 10 more things to say. So he said, brother, what church you go to? I said, Reverend Woods, I haven't been to church in 20 years. He said, why don't you get up one Sunday and come to Abyssinia? And I did. And then he said, why don't you come back home to Hall and run for the congressional seat? And I said, Reverend Woods, what made you think I could do that? He said, because I heard you speak. And your people gave you respect, and usually don't give no young brother the respect they give you. And I said, nah, but I'm not the one. He said, why do you say that? I said, because my people used to listen to all that yang yang okie do stuff. He said, you may not have a choice. But another assistant pastor was Derek Hawkins, who went on to be pastor of the First Street Baptist Church in D.C., counsel to Obama. And when I used to go to church, my sister, who had been sick with cancer, she recovered. She got married again to a Nigerian brother, 2 sons. And she got sick again, and I would take them to Sunday school. And their Sunday school pastor was Raphael Warnock. Okay? So I'm gonna cut it off here. I hope that I got some type of message across, because we've lost our will to fight. And you want to give me an example? We delivered the presidency to Joe Biden. Without the black vote, he would not be president. And what have we got for it? Juneteenth? What we got for it? A Supreme Court justice? But not yet one black leader of the buffer class has set up and said anything. They can send money to Israel. They can send it to Ukraine, but they owe us. And not one of them say anything. Whether it's Hakeem Jeffries, Kamala Harris, whoever. But give me a chance. They owe us. I hope I made the Eagles proud.
Mama.
I love this. Well said. We want to thank you so much for reminding us of how NCCU is a model of truth and service. And you don't have to worry, you'll be invited back to NCCU. We thank you so much for reminding the class of 1973 relive all those memories here at NCCU. Let's give another round of applause.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
Yeah.
Before I proceed to the induction of the class of 1973, our newest members of the Society of Golden Eagles, I know you are excited and ready to go. Before we do that, I want to take just a moment to recognize our newest Eagles, class of 2027. I want them to stand. The class of 2027, please stand wherever you are. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Absolutely. Thank you. Please be seated. I also want